Uh, so it's a great pleasure to have Alex on the platform today. He's not only a great friend of mine, but we go a long way back in rowing. He's a double Olympic champion, but not only rowing, he's written a book, and he's starting up some great new ventures. And when I knew him, when I rowed with him, he was the crew maker. You could put him in whichever boat and he would make the boat go faster. An amazing talent in the sport, and everyone who's met him has come off better for knowing him. So Alex, thank you for your time today. Great to see you again.
Andy, you're making me blush. It's very kind words. I'm not sure they're all true, but I appreciate them. Thank you.
Well, I'm only going off by what everyone else says. So by popular opinion. Hey, Gregors, look, so first of all, off the bat, what have you been doing since retiring from rowing? What have you done with your time?
Oh my gosh, yeah. So I finished rowing in 2016. I think it was the same time. Yeah, same time as you, Andy. We crossed the line in Rio and walked away from competing in the sport, at least. And to be honest, I didn't have any idea really what I was going to do. I didn't have a particular direction. I was just pleased to take a breather, I suppose. And I loved the first 6 months of that. And then after 6 months, I woke up in a cold sweat and didn't know who I was anymore, what I was doing. And I think we all probably find ourselves in that position at some point in our lives. 6 months after my retirement from sport happened, that was it. That was the day for me. And then within a day, I found myself signed up for an Arctic rowing expedition where I ended up joining a crew there were 6 of us in total on this ocean rowing boat, which are often seen rowing across the Atlantic now. There's a very popular Atlantic rowing race these days. So we were in the same kind of boat as that, and we rowed north, as far north as we could get until we hit the permanent ice sheet, and then we rowed south towards Iceland. We got caught up in a storm and ended up on this deserted volcanic island, and we got stuck there for 2 weeks because no one goes there, so we couldn't get off the island. But it was the most amazing, terrifying, terrible, but wonderful experience. But as a result of that, I kind of came up with the idea that I wanted to it made me realize what was important to me in my life, which was my children, spending time with my children, being with my children. I was out on the ocean and I wasn't with my children. So I ended up writing a book called Dadventures, which is about spending time and making memories together as a parent. Whether you're a mother or a father, it's called Dadventures because I'm a dad, but it's the kind of things that we like to do to get outside, to spend time together. Yeah, sorry, I'm rambling on. I'm on here. It's 5 years. It's been a long time.
Well, you've definitely filled it. I mean, I've definitely not. What was it? Written a book, been across the Atlantic, setting up my own business. I mean, you're on and you've built the room you're in as well.
Yeah, that's true. This is my own handicraft, but I wouldn't do that again. It was a painful process. No one can employ me as a carpenter, that's for sure.
Is that right? Well, it looks like you've done a pretty good job. From your time in rowing, you've obviously, I think, probably learned a lot from your time in rowing, and it sounds like you've put a lot of that to very, very good use in exploring your own capabilities, but exploring sort of ways to help others and ways to sort of be to play your part in kind of society, I guess. Is there any kind of cornerstone moments from your time as a sportsman, as a rower, which have lent itself more than anything else to your time after rowing?
Gosh, that's a great question, Andy. And I think as I'm looking at you now, the most pivotal moments were when I was in a boat with you. No, not because of you, but but and one of the biggest things that I've noticed, stepping away from a sport where I was part of a community every day, 7 days a week. We were down at that lake, in the boat together, in the gym, on the rowing machine together. And I was part of something far greater than myself. When you isolate yourself, which I did after that sport, not because I wanted to be isolated, just because I now wasn't a part of a big team, I became relatively lonely without realizing it. And also, so what has come back round now is I've realized the value of people and having a team, having people around me, and needing that to achieve anything that I want to achieve. And whether that is just communicating with your mate once or twice a day, or once a week or whatever, or working closely with someone, that community is super important. And so that's what I'm trying to build up back for myself now, so that I can live a happy and fulfilling life. There's one particular story that I'll just brush over very quickly with you. And it was our 2012 crew, London 2012 crew. And we actually, I think my perception of it was, we started that year going into to race the Olympics. We were selected as the Coxless Four. And I think we started that year off as 2 islands in a 4-man boat. There was myself and Tom, who'd rowed together before, and we thought about rowing alike. And you and Pete, who'd had an incredibly successful run of things together in a pair. And you were, and we were 2 sort of not opposing pairs, but we were 2 kind of individuals in a boat of 4. And it took us a whole season to go through racing and eventually be beaten in the last race before the Olympics, for us, I think, to realize how to mold each other together, how to come together as a unit, as a crew. And essentially, from my memory and my perception of it, it came down to a conversation, a true and honest conversation up in that mountain hut in Austria on that training camp. And I think that one conversation changed everything, who we were as a unit, as a crew. And I think that without that conversation, potentially we probably wouldn't have crossed the line first in that Olympic Games. And so that really sort of, I think about that daily, and that really makes me think about who I speak to daily and who is around me and who I need around me. So yeah, there's just a thought there.
No, I completely agree. It was a fascinating time, and I never really realized the magnitude of what we were walking into with London Olympic Games. Like, obviously there's a lot of buzz around the Home Olympics, but it wasn't until we sat on the start line. And I know it's something that Pete reflects on time and time again, but when they were doing the roll call, and in the final, and then it got to and GB lane 6, and then like 2 seconds later, you just heard this roar from 2 kilometers away of, was it 30,000 people at the finish line?
Yeah.
And I looked across, and looking at the Aussie boat with Drew Ginn sitting in there, and Drew Ginn is the equivalent of Steve Redgrave for the Aussies. He is their top dog, and that was his last race. It was his kind of Redgrave Sydney moment, and I reflect on that because it just, for me, in hindsight, it blows my mind, that process of that year, where we started off, like you say, those basically, 2 crews in 1 crew, and how we went through some really tough times, some really good times. I mean, it's fair to say we also broke the world record that year. We got the world's best time. We did some amazing stuff in that boat, but the pinnacle was sitting at the start line, feeling like we did, ready to take on the world's best rowers, and then to have the race that we did, and then finish in front of the crowd at the Home Olympics.
The picture you're painting there is perhaps something that people don't recognize, and I think that this happens in all sorts of areas of life. You have these assumptions about what things are going to be like, what things are like, and then very rarely as you imagine, as either as big, as scary as you imagine, or as exciting as you might imagine, or nerve-wracking as you might imagine. That situation there, I had no idea really that the start line of the Olympic Games was going to be deathly silent. It was eerily quiet down there. You could hear your opposition. Drew Ginn, you talk about, he was one of my rowing heroes. Don't tell Steve. Steve was as well, but he was one of my rowing heroes. And he was sitting in that boat just there, and you can almost hear him breathing next to you. There's no crowd down there. There's just the odd umpire or official or whatever wandering around. There's nothing. And then the roll call comes, as you described so well, and silent, silent, silent. Lane 4, silent. Lane 5, Great Britain. And we were lane 6, were we? I don't know, whatever. The crowd, the noise came up from 2. And I remember you turned round to us and said, "That's for us, boys." And I tell you what, I'd been sitting in that boat until that moment thinking, I could just jump out of here now, just swim to the edge there, disappear into the woods over there. No one would notice. Oh, maybe I should do that. And then you turned around and said that to us. And I was like, I'm in the right place here. Andy's up for it. Tom's up for it. There's nowhere else in the world I want to be. It's a good moment.
That was a good moment. I have to go back and watch it now. Back then, we were really good.
Sorry, could I just jump in? Because I wanted to ask a question, because like literally, you were talking about the build up to the Olympic Games, and I find it so interesting that you said you had a race before the Olympic Games which you lost, and it just made you realize what you had to do to actually come into the Olympic Games. So this is 2 questions for you, really and truly, is that when you had that conversation in, did you say it was Austria?
Yeah.
How were you feeling? That was it, do you know what, let's just be honest with each other, let's just lay it all out? Or was it just, you know what, this is what we have to do? Or is it a mixture of everything combined?
That's a great question. So from my perspective, our job was to win the gold medal. We were in an environment where anything but gold wasn't going to be good enough. And also, Andy, Pete, and Tom, who were my crewmates at the time, they'd won gold in Beijing before. The Coxers four had won gold in Athens before that, in Sydney before that. We were going for kind of something that's expected of us in that boat. And then what's more, our coach, Jürgen Grobler, he had only ever won gold. I'm sure that's the case. And he'd won like a million. He'd been to like, he was old. He's been to like a million Olympics. I don't know. As he's only ever won gold. And I remember that year being selected in that boat with those 3 other guys, thinking, if we muck this up, it's going to be on me, because they've won it before. This is on me. So I felt the nerves in that year. And then you mentioned the race that we didn't win 2 months before the Olympics. We were beaten by Australia, who came over. And that was a pivotal moment. And you picked up, it was a great catch there. You picked up that, because that, to me, that pushed us against the wall. That put our backs against the wall and showed us, I think in our hearts, we knew we weren't really reaching our potential, really maximizing on what we were capable of. But we hadn't really been able to find it or find a way out of it. And getting beaten put our backs against the wall and forced us to do something. So when we got to that meeting, it was only a couple of days after that race, we sat down, we had nowhere else to go. We could only pour our hearts out in that meeting, and we could only be totally honest with each other. And it was a kind of a life-changing experience for me, I think, because it showed me the value of or the difference between thinking you're being honest and thinking you're working as a team and thinking you're working like that, and the value of truly being honest, truly knowing that everyone knows what you're doing and why you're doing it, and truly being able to say what you need to say to each other. And yeah, I remember there were some awkward or some difficult things to voice in that moment, but we all understood why each of us were saying them, because if we didn't, we weren't going to win. So it was wonderfully, it was a revelation, really. And I remember the next day we got down on the water and the boat felt better. The next day, Jürgen was in the boat alongside us, or on the bank alongside us, taking times, and like, we haven't got that all year. And we weren't doing anything differently, sort of physically. We weren't different people physically. It was just through that understanding, that communication together. So yeah.
I mean, that's brilliant. When I heard that, I said, "Do you know, I need to get down to the nitty gritty of it," because it's so interesting how you said that people have that perception of they being honest with each other instead of actually being honest, showing their real emotion of, do you know what, this is what's happening. How do we get to that solution? So yeah, I just wanted to know that. I've also got another question, but I want to go back to Andy because I know it's you're interviewing.
No, mate. No, you go for it. You go
on. The question for me, obviously, because I in the time the 2012 Olympics was so hyped. I mean, when London got the Olympic Games, I can't remember. I think it was in 2004 where we found out, or
2005.
2005. There we go. Year off, but it, especially when I was in school, it was so hyped up. Schools getting tickets to see different sports in the Olympics. But I just want to know how you felt before the Olympics, like, because especially it's in our home country in Great Britain, London. How did you feel going up to the Olympic Games?
Yeah, so my run into forgive me, I'll just go back to my start in the sport, because I think it's related. I started rowing when I was about, I think, turning 17, 16, 17. And it was completely by chance. My local rowing club, in Evesham in Worcestershire, that's near Birmingham. And my school was just my local school. It didn't have a rowing thing, but there was a river down the road, and a local rowing club on the river. But a mate of mine went down to Evesham Rowing Club on a taster course. I don't know where he'd seen it, maybe in the paper or something, but they were just running a weekend course down there. And my mate, he was also called Alex, which is a bit confusing, but he went down and gave it a go. And he came back to school and said, "Alex, you should come down with me after school. You love it. You get out on the water. It's fun, and rowing. You'd be good at rowing." And I had zero interest in it. I'd never watched it on TV. I didn't know anything about it. I didn't know who Steve Redgrave was. And to be completely honest with you, sport wasn't my thing. It's not really my thing. I'm not that sporty. It's not my interest. And so I palmed him off for months and months. And eventually, just to shut him up, because he kept saying, "Oh, come down. Eventually, just to shut him up, I went down after school with him. And from the moment I put a boat on the water, I stepped in it and flipped out the other side into the stinking Avon River water, I knew it was going to be something that I wanted to throw myself into, pun, like get into, because it wasn't a sport. It wasn't like a normal sport for me. It wasn't about. It was a complex mix of activities, and actually, I'm sure I've had conversations with Andy about this. I think we have a vaguely similar perception of rowing, but I used to get the mickey taken out of me for saying it's not a sport, it's an art. But I do believe that, because it's about painting a picture. And what really drew me into the sport was, it's not about being as big and strong and fast as possible from A to B. Of course, that's an element of it, but it's about how you communicate with your teammates. It's about how you communicate with the boat you're in and the water and the rowing machine even, and your body, and the challenge of pushing when you need to push and holding back when you need to hold back. And also you've got a coach on the bank shouting 1,001 instructions at you because you're rubbish at that stage and you've got a million things to change, and they bombard you with stuff, but there's someone over there you're racing against and trying to beat, and then your body saying stop, stop, stop. And plus rowing, you go backwards, you can't even see where you're going. So there's all this complex stuff going on, and you have to find a way to filter out what you need to filter out, to understand what you need to understand. And it's just complicated, but amazing. And you're not just learning about sport or rowing, you're learning about yourself and other people. So much involved to it. So that is what drew me in. Now, I didn't have, coming back round to your question, I'm sorry, I've just gone off on one, but coming back.
Brilliant. That's brilliant.
Back round to your question, the Olympics didn't mean much, if anything, to me for many years after that. And I knew I wanted to get better. I knew I wanted to pursue the sport and be good at it. But the Olympics was so far in the horizon, so far off, it didn't resonate at all. And then eventually, I kept mucking things up, basically, and I got better, and I had a lot of support from, actually, my history teacher from my school became a rowing coach. So we worked together, and we then sort of got selected in the British rowing team eventually, as a sort of under 23 rower. But I'd muck up these races and have disaster after disaster, all of these problems. Eventually, I went to Beijing in 2008, the Olympics, as a reserve. And that was the first time where things fell into place. Before that, of course, I'd been aiming to go to develop the understanding of what the Olympics was, but it was only in Beijing that I understand what it really meant and what it was all about, and how I was going to turn my sort of disastrous rowing career so far into a successful career. And that's where I watched Andy, Pete and Tom and Steve win their gold in Beijing. I was on the sidelines as a reserve watching them. And I was like, how do I get one of them out of the boat and get in that boat? That's what I did.
Amazing. I love this conversation, obviously, because I can relate to some of it so clearly. I love what you just said about it's not a sport, it's an art. Without trying to make it sound grandiose and this sort of big thing, the concept of actually then what is a sport and what is an art, you've struck the nail on the head in terms of, rowing is about communication. It's about working together, and it's how you make other people feel. That's what art does, right? You create something and it influences people's emotions and people's perceptions. It can be challenging, it could be nurturing. And I think that's definitely what we're trying to do at LYR, and trying to take the best bits of the sport and put it in that frame. And I think when I see it at its absolute best, that's what we do. And that's what the best rowers do from the start. So I just absolutely love that thought, and that's going to stay with me for a long time. One, I mean, I guess you probably already answered it. But, from the moment you weren't a rower to the moment you kind of were, then the journey you've been on and the hindsight and everything else that's happened, and in an impossible situation where you can't know what the answer is, but the option of what life could have been, had you actually never succumbed to your mate's request to go rowing, had you never been a rower, are you in ever way, do you ever think about, actually, I should have just not tried it, because actually what I could have done Do you know do you see what I'm trying to ask?
I see what you mean. And my natural character is to joke, right? To say a joke right now and say, oh, I wish I'd never started rowing. But that is, I'm not going to do that. Well, I've just done it, but I'm not going to do that because it's the wrong time and place to do that. And also, it's just not true. I can't overstate it enough that rowing changed my life, and I can't overstate enough how I now live my life, or try to live my life, based on the skills, the tools, whatever you want to call it, that I learned from being a part of that world. And I again, it's easy to say, having lived it, but what was I going to say there? I wouldn't be who I am now if I hadn't been involved in rowing. And so what I was going to say was, it doesn't matter that I ended up being lucky enough to be in boats with you and going to the Olympics and winning Olympic medals. That was just the path that I ended up taking. That is irrelevant to the things that I learned from the sport. And so when we talk about communication, when we talk about leadership, when we talk about resilience, all these words that's very easy to throw around, were all things that I needed to put into practice or test out or learn. And I didn't have any of them before, or I had all of them to some degree before I started rowing. But they were grown, they were nurtured throughout the art that we talk about, the sport, the art. It doesn't even matter what you call it. It's a lifestyle. It's a thing. It's an activity, and they were all those sort of skills that I'm hyper aware now when I don't live by the rules that I learned from sport, and I catch myself and go, well, hang on a minute, this isn't going to take me in the right direction here. When I feel like something isn't going right, so I've just started a business, it's a coaching business, one-to-one with individuals, and I mean, I request to speak to someone and someone doesn't want to speak, or something I do doesn't hit home or doesn't work out. Then I think, oh, what am I doing? Oh, I should quit. Well, actually, no. I didn't do that in rowing, and it got me to where I want to. It might take me a year longer, or 5 minutes longer, or a month longer, but I know I can get through, and that's resilience. And I've learned that resilience, so I'd have to trust myself. This is one stupid little example, but
no, brilliant.
Yeah,
that's that's really good to hear, because it means my life wasn't completely wasted. But so look, I know you as one of the funniest guys in the team, and we've been very serious, but I'm going to ask you one more serious question, and then I want you to give us like a couple of funny stories from rowing, because I just remember from my time, we seem to be laughing a lot. And you're a great storyteller, so I'm definitely going to ask you to give us some of those. But one last serious question. I know you as a family guy. You've talked a bit about the communication, about the more delicate sides of the sport, the art of it, the connection with people, with friends, with colleagues, with crewmates, and the importance. And that's, I think, that's the true side of the sport. That's technique actually doesn't really matter. Physicality is important, but, actually how people connect. When, you've got 3 young kids, you've got, an amazing partner. Just tell us a little bit about that sacrifice and how hard it was to balance being, one of the best rowers in the world, one of the most experienced, one who was leaned on heavily by crewmates. You led that 4 in Rio, but you were balancing a lot. Just tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I mean, this is one of the things I'm most interested in now as well, and looking back, reflecting on the times you've just mentioned there. How do we perform in our lives when we have lots going on? And that's the case whether you're a 16 or 14, a child, like any age, a young person, any age, to an adult. We are bombarded, never more so than in these days right now. And so how do we perform and do the jobs we want to do and succeed in what we want to do, while also living the lives we want to live and performing in our other lives as well? How do we find that balance? And it's and so in my case, I had just turned a corner in this. I just won my first race in 2009, really. It was the first World Championship win. And that year we found out that my partner was pregnant with our first child. Just to be, throw it out there. And I thought that this was going to be the end for a while. I thought this was going to be the end of my rowing career, because you can't be a father and be successful in sport. You can't achieve both. So I'm going to have to walk away from rowing, or I'll be chucked out of rowing, because we're in this high performance environment where the tiniest second makes a big difference to what you do, whether you get selected, whether you win or not. So I was pretty concerned about that. It got to 6 months of pregnancy. We couldn't hide it any longer, and I had to flag it up to our coach Jürgen. I called a meeting with him, and I said, sat down with him and said, Jürgen, I've got something to tell you. And he said, what? I'm busy, Alex. Oh, he's German. So he's German. There's a deep German accent. I'm busy. And I said, Jürgen, and I sort of mumbled something out. Oh God, my heart was through my chest. I thought this would be my last day at rowing. And I said, Jürgen, I'm going to be a dad. And in that moment, his eyes glinted. I could see sort of like wet eyes. He leaned over the table, gave me a smack on the shoulder and said, Alex, that is fantastic news. I'm so happy for you. And that took me back right there. That knocked me for six, really. I was not expecting that reaction. So the long and short of it is I had support from my coach. What I didn't see and what I didn't notice and what I didn't know then was that he saw that what having a child was for me was giving me balance. It was giving me something else to focus on in life. And we can all do this. We can all do hobbies, do activities, support our friends and family, and still perform in whatever we want to do, whether that's schoolwork, college, university, our jobs. We can all achieve both if we accept and understand the balance that we have to create to be happy. I became a better rower when I had a family. I became a better rower when I had 1, 2, 3 children. I was best in my last year when I had 3 children. I ended up missing 2 of their births. So that was a bit of a sacrifice, a bit of a few difficult situations, few difficult conversations back at home. It was all part of it. So essentially what I'm saying is that it was a challenge. There were difficult times, but it made all the difference, learning to understand that we can do everything that we want to do, and we have to do everything we want to do, because we have to be happy, content people to achieve what we want to achieve. Does that make sense? I don't know.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely nailed it. Like, yeah, I mean, look, you're if you look at the perfect rower in the dictionary, you'll find a picture of Alex Gregory, and it's for everything you're saying. That is the reason why. I look brilliant. Look, right. So before you have a chance to act modest and bat that back, I want you to give us your favourite memory from rowing, the one that brings a tear to your eye with laughter every time.
I can't say that. I can't say that out loud.
Not that one. Oh, no, not that one.
No,
the other one.
The other one.
Yeah,
the other one. Gosh. I mean, come on, there's so much, we spent so much time. I haven't thought of one, but I think training camps were always amazing times. And when I think of fun you can have, we were so lucky to get to go on those training camps. Actually, just one serious point. Oh no, never mind.
Sure.
I think there was one funny time I remember. So Will Satch was one of our crewmates, one of our teammates, and we were in Portugal once. And there were these amazing rooms with big sliding glass doors, and you just walked out of your room, and then we walked down to the gym or the lake. But at the end of the day, we'd wash our kit in the shower. You get through a lot of kit, 3 training sessions a day, drenched in sweat in Portugal. You rinse out your kit and then hang it outside your room to dry. My room, I was sharing with Mohammed Sibihi at that time. And Will was in the room next door, and we could see Will's kit outside drying. So every now and again throughout the afternoon, we'd come out with a full water bottle and drench his kit in water. And every now and again, we come out and watch Will go over to his kit, look at his kit, and it was like just as wet as it was, in fact, wetter than it was before. He'd like look confused, put it back down, let it dry a bit, go out, see it was a little bit drier, then a little bit later, we'd have done that again, and his kit was wetter. This went on, no joke, for days. The same piece of kit was wet for days, and Will couldn't understand it for days. But I mean, that's just a stupid little thing, but it was what sort of got us through those difficult times. And if you can have fun with what you do, if you can enjoy your time, the difficult times the inevitable difficult times won't seem so bad. And if you can enjoy your time and have fun with the people around you, then you're onto a winner. And whether you win or last in a race, whether you succeed or don't succeed, at least you will have enjoyed the journey along the way. And I think that's what we did in rowing.
Well, that's a perfect moment, not to end it, because I'm going to open the floor up to everyone else here to ask you any questions. But our boss Matt Rostron, who's on this call now, his phrase when I first started, may have waned a little bit now, was, if we're having the most fun, then we're doing our job properly, because our job is to inspire. And if our coaches are having fun, if we're all having fun, then we're doing the right thing. And that's kind of where Race to Thames came from. It's kind of that idea of how can we have a lot of fun, and everyone on this call, the whole charity, who leans in hard for this event. And it is hard. We've got David, one of our colleagues, our COO. They've just had their 4th kid a week ago. He's got COVID. His son's got COVID. And he was on an email this morning helping me how he's something. So everyone is leaning in hard, but we're all having the most fun. And that message, you're absolutely right. Whether you're going for an Olympic gold at a first time Olympics, whether you're going for trials, whether you're just rowing, whether you're whatever walk of life, fun. Oh, hey, I'm so pleased you're able to join us today. Thank you.
Andy, you've just made me remember this, and I just feel like I have to say it. And it's just something that I picked up on. When you're in an environment, I think it was a perfect example there, what you said about David with sort of struggling at home, and yet still lending a hand to his team, the people that he works with, the people that he wants to help. A big turning point in my rowing career was going from feeling like an individual, feeling like someone I had to do things on my own, or I was supposed to do things on my own. I'm a male in this sport. You're supposed to know what you do. You're supposed to know what to do. You're supposed to be able to cope. And I just couldn't, and it wasn't working for me. It was only when I started to realize that if I helped you, Andy, if I made it easier for you, or tried to make it easier for you, if I gave you a slap on the back one morning when you were looking a bit tired or something, then you would do the same for me when I needed it. And a word here or there, or a little hug or a punch on the arm or something can change someone's day. And that's only ever going to pay you back in spades eventually when you need it back. And so if everyone did that, then you create this little culture between the two of you, and then that spreads and people see that happening and they start to do it. And I think that is what we started to do in our teams leading up to London, and then from London to Rio. We were all in this amazing environment together, and we came home pretty as a successful team where I think we all enjoyed the process. Anyway, another ramble. Sorry, carry on.
Right. Does anyone have any questions?
Can I jump in?
Yes, please.
Yeah, you touched on it. You've mentioned so much really just some amazing things there, Alex and Andy as well. I would like to hear a little bit more. You mentioned about how surprised you were by Jurgen's reaction to your child. I guess that kind of leads a little bit deeper into a little bit of leadership, and I like how you kind of, Andy seems to perceive you as definitely someone that leads and kind of makes the team work together, and how you do that and how you think you are in that role, but also how you've kind of been with great leaders and how you've touched on Jurgen. I'm sure there's more people. So yeah, a little bit more about like kind of leaders and your experience of being a leader or great leadership. If you have anything on that, that'd be great.
Yeah, cool. Great question, and quite difficult to answer because I think there's I have a lot of thoughts about that sort of thing. So when I think about one of our rowing crews, a rowing crew, I see it like there was no leader in the crew. We all had our role. Andy, so in the boat, I was with Andy. He was the stroke guy. He was one of the most experienced rowers out there in the field in any race we ever did. So I would look to him for that experience. And then Pete was the caller in the boat. He was very just meticulous with his words. He made everything sound easy and clear. And we all had a role in the boat. So yet we were all leaders in our own right because we were leading that role. And when I think about the best crews that I was a part of, it goes back to what I was trying to say a minute ago. When I started to think about how to make it easy for Andy, Pete, Tom, Mo, whoever I was rowing with, if I took my focus onto them, okay, maybe it's something physical. Maybe I have to sit slightly different to make Mo feel really comfortable. Then Mo could then feel comfortable, get all his power out. I was never ever going to be as powerful as Mo. That was his strength. That was his. That was one of the many things that he really brought to the boat. So if I can make it easy for him to get his strength out, then I'm going to be better off. And what's more, when I'm focusing on making it easy for my crewmates, then it's taking the pressure off myself as well. And I know I'm going to perform because I'm always working hard. I'm always trying, but I'm not worrying about what I'm doing in my little pocket. I'm thinking about what these guys are doing. And I found personally, I felt more comfortable in the big situations. I felt less nervous when I was concentrating on everyone else. I felt more a part of the team. I felt like my teammates knew that they could rely on me as well. And it feels like for me that was my form of leadership. It wasn't about standing up, and I think Andy would say maybe I spoke less than many people, or I didn't really talk much in boats, but I think my form of leadership was just to try and make it easy for everyone else. Other people have different roles and treat leadership in different ways. And then very quickly going back to Jurgen, because he was essentially our leader in the whole environment. Jurgen was an amazing coach. Just type in his name, look at his record. He was an extraordinary human, and I'm very proud to call him a friend now, I suppose. But I wouldn't have ever called him a friend when he was a coach. He was scary as hell. But as a coach, his way of coaching, and my sort of umbrella view of his way of coaching, was one of absolute simplicity. So he was very different to any of the other coaches that I'd worked with over the time. I mentioned this a little bit earlier in the chat. All rowers or anyone, we all, in whatever field we're in, we all have 1,000 things we should be better at, we could be doing better. And when a coach is on the bank watching a rower out there, they can suddenly see, oh, he should be sitting like that, doing that, or she should be moving like that, or doing this. And a lot of coaches say what they see. Move your hands quicker, push your legs faster, don't lean back so much. And in 2 hours, you can have 1,000 instructions and change all of them for 5 seconds and come off the water no different to how you were before. What Jürgen would do we'd be out on the water for 2 hours and he'd say 5 words. In total, 5 words. Guys, your legs are too, the stern is dipping, or something about the boat, like a technical thing about the boat. And Andy would turn around and go, what the hell's he talking about? Who's doing it? Is it me? Is it you, Alex? It's you, isn't it? And whatever. He wouldn't really do that. But we'd have a discussion within the boat together. We'd try and figure out who's causing the stern to dip. Jürgen wouldn't help us, wouldn't say anything more. And then pretty much for the next 2 weeks, we'd go out on the water and Jürgen would be alongside us and he wouldn't say anything. And then lo and behold, 2 weeks later, out of the blue, he'll shout across the lake, guys, the stern is better. And what he's done is he's just planted a seed. And this for me is his form of coaching, his form of leadership. He plants seeds for us to go and make the change, to figure it out together. So come the start line of the Olympic Games, that thing about the stern dipping, we will have solved. It's a robust change that we've figured out and understood ourselves. What a lot of the other coaches that I worked under, and they were really good coaches, but they would tell us 1,001 things. Come the start line of the Olympics, the stern might be a little bit better, but so might my legs, but I've lost something on here, and then I'm just, I don't know what I'm doing. No one's ever going to be perfect. Jürgen knew that. Jürgen accepted that. But he can work on, he can lead us to work on one thing at a time, to improve on one small thing at a time. And we're never going to be perfect come the start line of the Olympics, but we'll be better than when we were 6 months before or whatever. Yeah. So yeah, he really trusted us. He really trusted us to make the changes that he planted the seeds for. And that for me is something that I want to take in my coaching as well, when I work with individuals and helping them to put their lives in the way, to form their lives in the way they want to form, one thing at a time. We can't do everything all at once. It's a long, slow process, but patience is a virtue.
Yeah, brilliant. Look, Alex, thank you so much for your time. That's been the best 45 minutes for about 5 years since I was last around you. Look, so many thoughts, considerations, lessons, ideas, planting seeds, all of that. It's fantastic. And I'm sure I say it for everybody, but thank you so much for your time.